Hello there. Of all the character arcs on Teen Wolf, the most complex and satisfying had to be Theo Rakin. I'm not taking anything away from Styles, really. His Season 3 arc was peak television, and his complex performance in Season 5 is worthy of loud praise. But Theo Rakin had that rarest of all things in genre television, a solid villain arc followed by a satisfying redemption. In most shows, either the bad guys aren't really bad from the start, or they're misunderstood, or they're too young to know better, or, like Mickey Milkovich, they're all three. With Theo, we got a classic scene-chewing panto baddie in Season 5 who ends up in a hell dimension and learns how to be human in Season 6. It's good stuff all around. But Theo's is a complex tale. It's way too much to cover fully in one of these videos. So today I'm just looking at three key aspects of Theo's story. And I'm going to do my best not to wander off on a tangent, and I'll do my damnedest not to lapse into Dr. Phil type annoyingly accented armchair psychoanalysis. If you enjoy these weekly trips back to Beacon Hills, join us. Become one with the subscribe button and the alert bell, and give in to the power of Teen Wolf nostalgia.
There's no record of a heart condition, but a transplant would make Theo a genetic chimera like the others.
There are three things you need to know about Theo Rakin. First, he was always seriously damaged. A sickly kid in mind and body.
In 4th grade, you had an inhaler. I had one too. I remember this day where I ended up in the nurse's office with an asthma attack, a bad one. I was waiting to be taken to the ER. They told me what would happen when you go to the ER for asthma, how they give you oxygen and an IV of prednisone. It made it sound easy. Like everything would be okay.
And since Scott seems to remember that story, if not all the specific details, we know that part of Theo's life is true. Also, Theo was severely mentally ill. The boy had one of those vaguely described but widely used television mental disorders where the kid who vivisects the neighbor's dog grows up to be an FBI taunting serial killer. In this case, Theo apparently took his crazy directly to watching his sister die so he could have her heart transplanted into his body by the geriatric members of a supernatural leather fetish club. It's not completely clear how or why Theo hooked up with the Dread Doctors. Honestly, I think they recruited him. I mean, he was a sickly kid with severe mental problems, and they were looking for a vessel for a legendary serial killer with infinite mental problems. They must have figured they hit the jackpot, especially after how long it took for his sister to die, with little Theo just standing there and occasionally arching an eyebrow. I also think Theo didn't understand that if the Dreads experiment worked, he would disappear completely. Child Theo thought he was just signing up for the werewolf health plan to clear up his asthma and give him superpowers. He does not strike me as the type to donate his body to science, especially while he's still using it. We're never told what happened to him in the several years between the transplant and the Dread's return to Beacon Hills. I mean, was Theo just hanging out with them? Did he help dig the holes for the Chimera bake? These are things I wonder about. I imagine they experimented on him for a while at least. He was their first Chimera that didn't just fall apart when you poked it. I think they'd want to know why that was, and also why they couldn't graft Sebastian's essence onto him. I imagine a lot of poking and prodding in the intervening years, but by the time they returned to Beacon Hills, the Dreads had a very important role for Theo. This is the second aspect of his arc. Theo had a job to do when he came back to town. He had a job, but he also had his own plan that pretty much contradicted his employer's wishes. First, the job. The Dreads would try a frontal assault on the town's alpha werewolf with Belasco. If that worked, Theo would be there to pick up the pieces of the pack and keep them out of the way while the Dreads went about their business. Since Belasco's attack failed, Theo was tasked with interacting with Scott and the pack and directing them in ways that would avoid conflict with the Dreads, while at the same time maneuvering them into certain necessary situations, like that visit to Eichenhaus. Y'all know it was Theo who planted the book in Tracy's room, right?
Book worked. Now they're going to see Valak. They're going tonight.
Please empty your pockets into the container.
The Dreads needed Kira in Eichenhaus because her recently enhanced abilities would interact with the security system enough to allow the doctors to get in. Yeah, that was all Theo. Of course, he then needed to get rid of Kira because she was now way too powerful, so he first undermined Scott's trust in her and then planted the dead body at the McCall's home. All of that was just to get Kira either arrested or sent away. That was just one of the myriad of attacks on the confidence and stability of the pack in the overall effort to undermine and weaken Scott.
Theo, nice going on that tourniquet. You probably saved her life.
We don't go after him. We go after someone he loves. Put your hand here.
Why didn't you tell Scott?
Didn't think you wanted me to. Don't say anything. Why not? Because I never said anything about Donovan.
All this was partly his job and partly his personal plan.
Did you forget that you're supposed to be keeping me in the loop on everything? Not to me.
You see, Theo didn't really care if the Dreads succeeded. I don't think he expected they would. He just wanted his own personal power to grow in the process. His plan was always to take out Scott. Theo hoped that he could do it in a way that would allow him to get the Alpha Spark. Basically, get Liam to kill Scott, and then Theo could kill Liam. After that failed, but the Dreads were able to bring back the Beast of Gévaudan, Theo adjusted his plan. He quit his job, dumped the Dreads altogether, stole their go-go juice, and made his own pack of dead Chimera. He had one thing in mind: steal whatever power made the Beast so big and so bad. That's why he sent his legion of super rejects to find Deucalion, because Deucalion knew how to steal power. He then led the B-team into Eichenhaus to get Lydia. Lydia could draw out the Hellhound. The Hellhound was destined to bring the Beast, and Theo gets his shot at stealing the Beast's power. That was his plan, and we all know it didn't turn out. Deucalion's deception, Theo's greed for power that offed most of his pack, his spectacular failure with stealing the Beast power, and finally the confrontation with a very pissed off Kira in the tunnel. So then Theo went to Hell, or a generic hell dimension designed by the Skinwalkers. This was his punishment for all the bad stuff he'd ever done. And as the audience, safe in our homes, we felt good about that. A true villain gets what he deserves. Hooray! Then we got into season 6, and those diabolical Teen Wolf writers set about the very difficult task of redeeming one of their most irredeemable characters. I mean, seriously, everybody talks about how bad Gerard is. Theo literally killed multiple characters, including Scott, destroyed Styles emotionally, shot Malia, and much, much more. He was the single worst person ever on the show. But those writers, ooh, they are super duper smart and just as manipulative as Theo. They brought him back, and then we find out that that generic hell dimension he was in was actually an endless cycle of non-surgical heart resections at the hands of his super pissed off sister. We don't actually know how long this went on, but just in the course of what they showed us, we eventually were all like, okay, little girl from the ring, he is sorry. You can stop ripping his heart out now. So just like that, just a very few minutes of screen time, and we're already feeling sorry for Theo. Then they took the next step. They paired Theo with the character he had directly damaged the most. While others were killed and emotionally wrecked in Theo's wake, I think Liam actually suffered the most. Theo turned Liam into the thing that Liam feared the most, an uncontrolled rage machine. This is the nightmare Liam kept locked away in his heart, and Theo ripped it out and made it real.
I can't know about this. I can't do this to them again. The way they looked at me when they saw what I did to that car. They can't see me like this.
That's what you don't get. I want to kill you. I want to.
So these genius writers, knowing exactly how to manipulate us poor brainless viewers, paired Theo and Liam on a series of adventures. They wrote clever banter and placed the former villain in situations where he could sacrifice himself and prove that he'd changed.
Being the bait.
No!
Then they go further. Even after all those good deeds, Theo is homeless. Living in his Toyota and afraid or ashamed to reach out to Scott and the pack. The writers then just rinse and repeat. More comic scenes between Liam and Theo and more heroic sacrifices.
I'm not dying for you.
I'm not dying for you either.
By the end, Scott's actually calling Theo an ally, and while he may not be fully forgiven, he's definitely fully redeemed. Thanks for watching. Remember to like the video, and I know I missed a lot of stuff about Theo, so tell me in the comments. I'll see you next time we go back to Beacon Hills.